Hey everybody, welcome out to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yee, and today I'm taking a look at Old London Bridge. The previous bridge fell down, and so we can rebuild it. Faster, better, stronger. The $6 million bridge. This is published by Queen Games, designed by Gabriele Bubola and Leo Colovini, two decently well-known designers who've been at this for a while. This is a game that I don't think looks terribly exciting per se from the cover, but I was kind of intrigued by it. So let me show you how it plays. Then I'll give you my thoughts on it. Here's the setup for a game of Old London Bridge. There are building pieces here in the middle of the board that players will be kind of bidding on in order to be able to place them into their bridge. Every player has 2 of these bridge pieces. When they grab one of these buildings, they'll slot it right in there so it stands up so everyone at the table can see. But for purposes of this review, as I slot them in, I'm just going to kind of put them at an angle so the camera can read it. Now, at the start of the game, this is placed out here randomly. You'll, over the 12 turns of the game, or 12 rounds, you'll flip over one of these gate pieces, which will rotate this a certain number of spaces. Now, on a player's turn, what they're going to do is they're going to select one of their cards from their starting hand here. And these are kind of the initiative cards. So if I chose this one, and the other players at the table are going to then choose, and we simultaneously reveal. This person chose a 0, this one chose a 1, and I played a 4. I really wanted to go first. So we're going to resolve this in highest to lowest turn order. So yellow is going to get to go. They get to place onto a space over here in order to grab a building piece and put it into the bridge. By placing here, you earn a certain number of coins. So in this case, yellow is going to earn 3 coins, and they get to grab this building piece and set it into their bridge. Now you're going to evaluate this building's action. As I said, the banks are going to be pointing over here towards the treasury, so they will earn money. So in this case, you will take that action at the strength of the number of gray shields that you have showing. At the start of the game, you have 1 shield of that respective color. So I'm going to take 1 extra coin for my action. Then the next player is going to go, and they'll place over here, and they'll grab 2 coins for their placement there. And they get to place this one into the bridge. This one doesn't have a specific action, but it's a shield of all 4 colors, so every action they take in the future will be strengthened. And then the last player goes, and they put out wherever, and they grab the thing. In this case, they get to move their piece forward on the bridge track, or on the chapel track. So each of the buildings points at one of the 4 actions that they resonate with. So this one gives you money from the treasury. This one lets you advance further on the guard gate track. Once you hit these spaces that show these little hexagons, you can grab one of these, which will give you some special one-time ability that you can use whenever you'd like. As you advance on the chapel track, you can earn money, but this is also the tiebreaker in case 2 people play out the same number card, or ties for end-game scoring bonuses. Over here, this building is going to point towards these areas here where you can earn new cards. That is important because after we finish a turn, all the cards that you spent return to their supplies, so I no longer have a 4. However, players always keep their 0 in hand, which is why it's a different color. It goes back into their hand. They can play the 0 as many times as they want, but as you play these other cards, they go away, diminishing the strength of your hand. So this one over here is going to allow you to get more of these pieces, or more of these cards. Let's say someone had 5 green shields when they took this action. They could grab any combination, a 3 and a 2, or a 2, 2 and a 1, or a 1 and a 4, however they like. As I said, this building over here has no innate action, but it strengthens all other color shield actions. And then lastly, the park allows players to reset their numbering. Over here, I went from 53 to 29 to 14. If there's nothing out here that I can place in lower than a 14 on my next turn, I better try to come over here, grab a park, which lets me reset my numbering back up to 60 and to go across again here. So that is the basic ideas of London Bridge. After you play each turn, you're going to rotate this wheel a certain number of spaces. This X area here cannot be placed on. So for each round, you cannot grab one of those things, but you can always go into the middle here. Let's say that someone grabbed the chapel here, moved forward on the chapel track. If you really want this next chapel, you can place into this middle area, where you have to pay 2 coins, but then you can grab any one of the buildings, including the one that is X'd out for the round. And multiple players can go into that middle space and pay coins, but they cannot share on these outside areas over here. That's where these little tokens here on the bridge track come in. They're little exceptions to the rule. Like one time in the game, you can spend this in order to be able to place onto that X'd out spot for the round. 12 rounds and then the game ends. Based on what random selection you have down here, there will be 4 different scoring objectives, like whoever's moved the furthest on the guard gate track, or whoever's moved furthest on the chapel track. Whoever has the most value of leftover cards in hand at the end of the game will get majority points. If you weren't able to build bridge pieces and you weren't able to put a park in there, then you can take a penalty for pieces that you don't have in there. The game does come with multiple different scoring options here for each of the 4 different colors, and so that's how you play Old London Bridge. As you can see, if you've played a decent amount of games, you're going to look at the stuff that's in here and say, a lot of this feels pretty familiar. The central conceit of the game being building your bridge in that kind of descending number order might trip you up because you probably want to go from lowest to highest, like a lot of games are kind of trained to do. But you go from highest to lowest, and I like that little sequence. It's kind of familiar. It's like Racco, or it's kind of like the inverse of Welcome to the Roll and Write games or something like that, where you're trying to line things up in a numerical order. We do that very naturally. We like to, put things in an order. And so it feels familiar, but it doesn't feel trite. It doesn't feel like a game that's just copying other things. The alchemy, the mix of the things together is pretty smooth, actually. The game is only 12 rounds. You flip over a gate tile, everyone picks a card, everyone picks a building, and then you move on. The game just flies by, even with the full 4-player count. It's not a game that bogs down. And I like the fact that the buildings are constantly changing. The stacks are always the same building, and so it's just the number that changes. So your interest in each stack, it wavers because I'm interested in taking the bridge gate action to move on that track, but now a really bad number just came out. One that, I'm still in the 50s and now 17 jumped out. Am I going to take that action and then next turn I basically have to take a park to kind of reset my numbering? That's good. All of this feels good and smooth. The game is constantly giving you things. The few things I think you might trip up on your first few plays of this are you number things from highest to lowest as you move across the bridge. And then also when you place your person on the spots of that central cog, that gear, you get that number of coins. So the 3, I think there's a lot of games that you look at it and you assume, okay, I must pay that amount to get it. No, you're getting it. You're getting points. You're getting a decent amount of points for going to that spot. If you constantly go to the 3, you're getting a pretty handsome amount of points compared to the end game scoring. But the building actions are intuitive. They point at the thing that they belong to, the bank, the 2 tracks, and then getting more cards. That's awesome. I'm actually really impressed with the graphics and the design of this game. The art is bland Euro game, and that's okay, because I feel like that fits this. This is not a game that needs like a super deluxe-y gorgeous production. And yet it comes with those bridge pieces, and you slot your pieces in, and it makes it visible for everyone at the table, whether you're sitting 2 and 2, or whether you're sitting 1 on each side of a table. Everything's visible to you, everything's visible to other players, so that's good information. You can look at something and say, this high number out here, I'm the only one that can get that high number. No one else can. So they're not likely to take it. You can take a number that doesn't fit you're following your lowering number sequence, but you have to rip an old building out to put it in. And there's an okay penalty for that. You would rather fill in your bridge all the way. And so it gives you information to work with as you're looking around the table saying, how high of a priority card should I play? And I like that little mini game. But I've played this game even with people who don't love bidding for turn order and that type of thing, and it didn't really bother them because you can often play a 0 and still get a good thing by the time it's your turn. You can play a 4 and you might have way overbid everybody else and you say, oh, I wasted my 4. But okay, right? It's important, but it's not crucial. A misplay of one of those cards is not going to wreck your game. I think this game works really well. It's not terribly exciting, and I think that the replay value would suffer a bit if not for those tiles that you can change out the endgame objectives, the endgame scoring, I should say. I think that's good, and I like that there are some included in the box that don't require you to play for majorities. It's just how well you did at a certain attribute in the game gives you a certain number of points. But also, the downside of switching those out is it just makes certain parts of the game far more important, but some of them are pretty interesting, and so it's about adapting to that layout. Overall, I think this is a fun game. I think that my biggest criticism is that the two-player variant is not as good. And for me, that's important with this type of a game because I want to be able to just pull out with 2 players and play it quickly. You play 6 rounds instead of 12, and you place out 2 priority cards, and so then in the order of the priority cards, you put out your person, and then you move your person in that central cog, and then the other person goes. You know what I mean? And so you might place out, your opponent places out, you might move, then your opponent moves. Or you might place out and move, and then your opponent places out and moves. And so it depends on what the cards are that you put out. If I have the 2 highest, then I take 2 actions first. I think that's okay, but the game almost becomes, at that point, it just kind of happens. Whereas I feel like the 3-4 player is kind of where it's at, but I feel like a lot of companies don't want to put 3 or 4 player count only on a game because it won't sell as well. This 2-player variant is not bad, but it's not as fun as the higher player counts. And I think that there's some good little things going on there. And the more players, the more important your card play is in the round. But also, like I said, not devastating if you don't get to go first. I think this game's fun. I'm going to give it a 7.5, a seal of approval, because this is a game that if you see around, you might want to try it. You might really check it out. This is the kind of game I could see pulling out a convention and saying, hey, do you want to play something that feels like it was designed 10, 15 years ago? It doesn't feel fresh, but everything about it is fun. It's simple. It's almost a throwback to the way that older Euro games were designed. Smooth, some interaction points, but not devastating and fun. I almost feel like this game could have been submitted to Queen Games 15 years ago, lost in the archives somewhere. They pulled it out and said, hey, let's publish this. It kind of feels like a classic, a little bit older of a game. It's a game that feels out of time, but fun. So 7.5 for me. I quite enjoyed Old London Bridge, definitely more than I expected to. So I think that you might as well. Anyway, thanks for coming by the Dice Tower for another review. My name is Chris Yee. Have yourselves a fantastic day.